New Orleans, 1728. The air is thick enough to drink, and the cicadas are screaming like they know a secret. A ship eases into port, heavy with supplies, hope, and exactly 24 young women who have never seen a swamp in their lives. They step onto the docks in gowns meant for French winters, clutching long, narrow wooden chests that look, well, let's just say they don't look like anyone's idea of a hope chest. Some people claim the caskets carried trousseaux, lace, linen, and the promise of marriage. Others insist they held something else, something with teeth. And in a city already full of gossip, ghost, and questionable city planning, it didn't take long before the whispers began. The girls are pale. They don't like the sun. And those coffin-shaped trunks, they never open. Welcome to New Orleans, Cher, where every legend has a heartbeat, and some of them still bite. Welcome to Simply Suspicious, the podcast where history gets side-eyed, folklore gets a raised brow, and the truth is usually wearing someone else's lipstick. Let's set the scene. It's the early 18th century, and Louisiana is still a French colony that's mostly swamp, mosquitoes, and a surprising number of people who accidentally died because they underestimated alligators. The population problem was serious. New Orleans needed wives, domestic labor, and moral stabilization, as well as fewer men brawling in the streets because there were exactly 0 women to impress. So France created the Filles de la Cassette, the Casket Girls. The name comes from their cassettes, which were small rectangular wooden trunks holding their belongings. These were not actual coffins, but they were coffin-shaped because of course they were. France said, let's send women to the New World, and the luggage department said, make it spooky. These women were mostly orphans educated by the Ursuline nuns in need of marriage prospects, and they were promised a fresh start in the colony, and they were also absolutely unprepared for subtropical hell. When they arrived in 1728, New Orleans did not greet them kindly. The colonists took one look at pale women wearing heavy French gowns, stepping into a swamp town summer, carrying coffin-like trunks, and said, oh, vampires. Honestly, same. The girls were placed under the care of the Ursuline nuns, the same order still associated with half the ghost stories in the French Quarter. The convent, which still stands today, became the center of the legend. The trunks were stored on the 3rd floor while the girls were processed, housed, and matched for marriage. But here's where things get delightfully weird. Locals claim the trunks were suspiciously light. Too light for clothing, too light for linens, and light enough that people began whispering, they're empty, waiting to be filled. And because the French Quarter has always been like this, the rumor morphed into, the girls transported themselves in the caskets. This is what happens when humidity exceeds 90%. The second thing was the convent attic windows were nailed shut. The Ursuline nuns boarded up the 3rd floor shutters. No explanations, no access, no opening them again, and this didn't make people calm down. This made them feral with speculation. Something is up there, locals insisted, something that shouldn't see daylight. The church said the shutters were closed to protect the girls' property, and New Orleans said, sure, Jan. The third thing was that centuries later, police refused to open the attic. Reports vary, but the story that stuck is this. 2 officers broke into the attic one night to investigate the legend. They never came back out. Their bodies were supposedly found bloodless and drained. Now, is this factually accurate? Absolutely not. But is it the kind of rumor New Orleans treats like gospel? Absolutely yes. So let's talk about what might actually be true. Because while I love a good undead debutante story, the real explanation is surprisingly interesting. 1, the girls were pale because they lived in a convent, and traveling on a ship for months tends to sap that Mediterranean glow. 2nd, the caskets were probably just luggage. French luggage was built to be narrow and sturdy, coffin-like by coincidence, not design. 3rd, the attic shutters were nailed shut to protect valuables from humidity and storms. Not vampires, just Louisiana weather doing Louisiana things. 4, the vampire rumors may have been a cover for colonial misogyny. Many men didn't want wives, they wanted concubines. domestic workers without rights, or simply to maintain bachelor freedom. So the new women arriving with church protection were seen as a threat. Calling them vampires was a convenient way to dehumanize them. 5. The legend survived because New Orleans loves a monster. Truly loves, cherishes, raises one up like a pet. Ghosts, demons, spirits, cursed rooms, if you can name it, there's a tour company exploiting it. But here's the truth buried under all the Gothic embellishment. The Casket Girls were young women thrown into an unfamiliar world, trying to survive marriage, heat stroke, and colonial expectations, while people accuse them of blood-sucking. Honestly, relatable. Thank you for joining me on this shadow-soaked walk through colonial New Orleans. The Casket Girls may not be undead, but their legend has teeth, and it still bites through 300 years of rumor, religion, and really questionable luggage choices. Please make sure to rate and review, and if you want to, go over on Instagram and follow us at simply_suspicious. Thanks for a wonderful 2025. Bye, y'all.